Hi, everybody. This is Jay Frost speaking, and I am once again here to serve as your host today in this series of flash classes from DonorSearch. Before we do the proper introductions and tell you all about the platform and most importantly about the speaker and her topic today, I just want to welcome you and encourage you to grab your colleagues and friends together, drink, and make yourselves comfortable. We will be online with you in just a couple of minutes, maybe 1 or 2 minutes after the hour. Until then, just make yourselves at home, which is where you are, or your office, and we'll be with you in just a second. Good afternoon. Again, everybody, this is Jay Frost, and I am once again here to serve as the host in today's flash class, now a weekly and more series from DonorSearch.net. We're very happy to welcome back Robin Cabral on the screen. Is a popular presenter in this series, and we're very happy to have her come back and present today, as you can see, on how to turn your event into supportive donors, which seems to be constant riddle for many of us in fundraising. We'll have a lot of answers by the time we're done. But before we jump in and properly introduce Robin, I want to make sure to reintroduce this platform to you and tell you how you can interact with the presenter and also get a copy of this presentation. Many of you have been to these sessions before, so if you have, you can just put your fingers in your ears and make some sound as I tell you this story, but it'll be important for those of you who either don't remember or are coming here for the first time. View this as sort of like the flight attendants telling you what will happen aboard your flight today. The GoToWebinar platform which we use is very helpful to doing a couple things. The first, to make sure that we can silence all the microphones out there so you're free to converse with your colleagues. But secondly, and most importantly, that we can make a recording of this flash class so you can access it later. You'll find dozens of these, in fact, under the Resources tab at DonorSearch.net. I'll repeat that later, but just again, DonorSearch.net, which is the website for DonorSearch, which is hosting a series of flash classes, does record and post all these flash classes for you. So you don't need to worry if someone can't be with you. You can access the content later. The same is also true of the slides themselves, which you can get from DonorSearch, or of course you can get them directly from Robin Cabral, our presenter today, and she'll have her contact information in the slide deck for you. We would encourage you to make sure you can reach out to her and talk to her about a whole host of things after the presentation today. Another thing you'll want to do is be able to ask questions and make comments. We encourage you to do that at any point in the presentation. In fact, it'll be helpful to post them earlier rather than later so you can make sure that she has a chance to read them and to answer them. I'll be feeding those to her towards the end of her presentation. So just post any questions under the questions tab, and again, she'll be answering those in due course. Now, Robin Cabral, if you're not familiar with her, well, you should be, and you certainly will be by the end of the presentation today. She is the leader in specializing in providing outsourced interim development services and coaching, and assisting smaller organizations in their first campaigns, whether they're annual capital or endowment campaigns. She's also an international master of faculty trainer for AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, and presents nationally and online like she's doing today. She's working with so many organizations and bringing lots and lots of this expertise of 20 years plus in the field, and just the same kinds of very specific targeted approaches that she'll be talking about today with how to turn your event attendees into supportive donors. So we're very, very happy to welcome back Robin. Robin?
Thank you very much, Jay. I'm glad to be back. And actually, this particular webinar I created just for DonorSearch. So this is my first time ever doing this. So I hope it's a success. Just a little bit more about me, but it's not all about me. So I'll just gloss over this a little bit. Again, 20 plus years, owner developed consulting solutions. I'm a certified fundraising executive, and I have a master's in philanthropy and fund development from St. Mary's University of Minnesota. So anyone has any questions about that particular program, let me know. But why don't we just stop about me and let's just move right into the content. So here's what we're going to cover today. This is the big question that we all kind of face. We have these special events. So how do we turn our event attendees into supportive donors? And is there even a way? And I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to give you some step-by-step instructions on how to do that. So here's what we're going to cover. Why special events, right? Why do we have them? How can we use them? How can they fill our donor pipeline? And then we're going to look at the difference between transactional versus transformative giving, which a lot of us already know, but it's good to review that. And then how to steward your donors, and this is the key to kind of converting them into supportive donors, is stewardship before the event, during the event, and then after the event. And then how can, if at all, major gifts and special events can work together towards the same aim. So, this might be the most difficult thing because events are very, very transactional, as we know, but surely I think if you implement some of the things that we're going to go over today, this can help transform your funding events and fill your donor pipeline with supportive donors and not just event attendees, and I think that's what we're looking for. So the question begs itself, why special events, right? Well, almost every organization has one. Type in the questions box if you do or you don't and how many you do. Some of us have more than one. And certainly events serve a purpose. They're great for public awareness. They do bring in money, although they probably are the least cost-efficient or effective way of bringing in money, cost per dollar raised. You certainly have a captive audience, whether they're a group of golfers or a group of gala attendees. They're there for the night. And certainly, if done thoughtfully with the steps that I'm going to outline in this particular presentation, events can go places in terms of enhancing donor acquisition, and certainly it's not just about acquisition, but more importantly about retention. So here's some myths about special events that I want to share with you, right? While we think we have events to raise money, and we do, the reality is, and I'm just going to say this, that they don't. I mean, I've worked as a fundraiser just like many of you are, and we oftentimes don't consider in the cost of staff time to these events, and if we did, we probably wouldn't be making much money at all when we report the net. So, they're not a good source of funds. I mean, industry standards say that it takes about $1.33 to raise $1 in special event contributions, so not very, very effective at all. And, they don't raise a lot of fast money. And what I mean by that is you can spend 6 months or more planning a particular event, and guess what? That event will take time away from your staff and direct services and everything else that you are providing. So here are some kind of I'm going to give you some pros and cons, but I'll start with the cons first and then we'll move to the pros, right? So they take a lot of time, they take a lot of organizational skills, and while we oftentimes have volunteers who are helping out, let's be real about it. Who ends up with the bulk of the work? It's mostly, you know, a lot of staff time, both the fundraisers as well as other staff being spent on organizing events. And certainly the amount of money that we bring in may not justify how much time we're spending on it, 6 months, if not more than that. And of course, as I said before, most people, or at least the ones I've come across, do not actually figure out how much time staff has put into the event, not just the fundraiser, but everybody who's serving on a particular committee or helping out in some way. And certainly, if you do not bring in major donors, it is as such a high expense cost. So, and the other thing is, you know, you have a snowstorm, you have a hurricane, you have bad weather, people don't show up, you know, things can go a little weird with events and can kind of derail them. So you want to be careful of that. And then, you know, what are some pros? I mean, because I've just shared the cons, but there are definitely some pros to why have an event, right? And certainly there's, you know, within events, there's a ton of ancillary ways that you can raise money, meaning that you can sell raffle tickets, you can have a silent auction, you can have a live auction, you have donors who are making in-kind contributions, you have ad books. All of those things provide pipelines of revenue streams and potential donors for the longer term if done correctly. And certainly, we've all been to events where they've felt good and people are, you know, in a jovial mood and everyone seems to be kind of focused on the mission for that particular night or focused on the event. And certainly, they are a great way to generate a lot of publicity and visibility. Years ago, it used to be, you know, media, print, advertising, so forth, radio, and now you get a lot of social media around events that happen. Look at that. There are more pros than there are cons. So, you know, really they provide an experience and an engagement to your volunteers, including boards. Fundraisers or special events are great ways for board members to get engaged in fund development, right? They can sell tickets, they can invite their friends, they can be ambassadors during the evening, they can donate items for your silent auction. So for those who are looking for greater board engagement, a special event can be used as a process tool to get you there. And also, you know, they bring a lot of different people together, you know, and a lot of people together one night. Again, that captive audience that is supporting your organization. And look at here, more pros. So, you know, and they really, if done right, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, they can help build and strengthen relationships with your current donors, your major donors who may be attending the event, and acquire new ones. So you certainly want to, it's a way to bring in new people. Maybe your major donors can invite new people to come and see who you are, or your board members can do that to introduce folks to the organization. But certainly, it's a way to connect a donor with the cause and provide some significant face time with them the night of the event. The question is, how do we use that face time to our advantage while the event is going on? And so I have a question for you, and I don't know if I can see the questions or not, if you can type them in. But what type of events does your particular not-for-profit hold? And feel free at any point during this presentation to type any question you may have into that questions box, because we'll be sure to be answering those questions at the end. But if you just want to share with me rather quickly, you know, what types of events does your organization hold? Do you have gala events? Do you have walkathons? What kind do you have? So if you just want to quickly just type your name and your type of event in the questions box. So right now I'm going to cover, and I believe strongly in, looking at what is the difference between transactional versus transformative giving. Because this is going to make all the difference, and this is what you want to do. You want to take donors from a transaction as an event attendee to a transformative, engaging relationship with your organization. So what is transactional gifts? Well, transactional gifts are just that. They're financial transactions. And you will oftentimes see transactional gifts at events. People will sign up on your bid sheet for its silent auction item. At the end of the night, they will have won their silent auction item. They will check out, they will pay you, and they will leave. That's not about something long-term. That's about, bidding on an item they really like and getting it. And that's something you can send them a receipt for, like all transactions, financial transactions. Those are kind of how I would define transactional gifts. It's more about really getting donations than it is about building relationships. And sometimes, I know the reality, and not-for-profits, we are sometimes forced to get donations to meet goals and such, and that building relationship thing can get circumvented, but we don't want that to happen. It should be vice versa, the other way around. And so with transactional giving, certainly success is just purely monetary. It's how many people attended, how much did they give, how much did we raise. It's not about how many people attended, what kinds of contact did we have with them, and what kinds of relationships did we build. So what is transformative giving? Well, by contrast, it's more than financial transactions. It's really what's behind, behind kind of behind that financial transaction. The head, the heart, the hand, people who are starting to get invested in the organization's mission and supporting that. So it's really much more, and it's actually a reflection of a maturing thought process about the cause. Folks are deciding that they really want to take action and become greater engaged in the cause and become more deeply committed to the cause. So when you look at transformative giving, it's definitely much more than money. It's about that kind of relationship that we all kind of talk about and want. So really, when we look at events, they can be very transactional in nature, right? And how are they? Well, we spend most of our time in transactional ways. Those ancillary ways of giving or pipelines are really very transactional in nature. Raffle, silent auction, a live auction. Those are transactions. They're not mission-oriented gifts. Of course, one event that I've seen, or one thing during an event that I've seen work really well towards mission-oriented gifts is what's called gifts of love, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Sometimes, if you have an existing major giving program in your organization going on, these two can be at conflict, and actually events can take away from, if not done sensitively enough or coordinated, can take away from the major giving program. Or, and it's not on this slide, but in fact if you have a major capital campaign going on and you're having a special event, donors can think that in essence they're giving to the capital campaign because they bought a silent auction item. So be very careful of that. Oh, let me go back. People can purchase tickets. They can, buy silent. They have a nice dinner, and then they leave, and that's it. It's done. It's over with. Very rarely in my consultative practice do I see organizations that have a strategy for relationship building. Maybe they have a strategy for relationship building after the event, but many rarely do before the event and during the event. And people who attend are really just, it's quid pro quo. My friend invited me. I'm here. I bought a ticket, so that's why I'm coming. And they're transactional because in many cases we forget to insert that very compelling program. So I didn't see any answers to the last question, but I'll throw this one out there. in your organization, do you currently have a plan in place to steward donors before, during, and post-event? And I'd be curious to hear from those of you who do what you do. So that would be lovely if you could just type that into the questions box, or maybe Jay can prompt people. I don't know if they have access to the questions box, but do you have a plan in place? Because if not, by the time this webinar is over, you should have a plan in place, and I'm going to take you step by step through what that plan should be. And if you're listening to this webinar, I will certainly offer to send you some resources on a plan, a sample plan, as well as some suggestions for kind of pre and during event and post-event. So, how do you steward donors? Yes, Jay?
Hi. Just wanted you to know that we've had a lot of responses to the first question, and we'll probably get a bunch to the second.
Great. Now,
so
I can't,
if you'd
I
like
can't
to
see them.
Okay, well, would you like me to tell you some of the things they talk about in terms of the events they're holding now, or would you like to hold that to the end?
No, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it. It adds more to the presentation, sure.
Okay. Well, let me see. There are a whole bunch, so I'll try to go through them quickly. So Elizabeth says we do a 12-year, let me see, gala, golf events, comedy night events, road race, fishing tournament, flower shows, young professional mixers. Lisa notes a black tie gala and reunion events. Kay talks about a trivia night. That sounds like fun.
Wow.
Stephanie talks about a reverse raffle. Boy, I'd love to know more about that. Sarada talks about a gala and celebrity tasting. Hopefully not actually tasting the celebrities, but you never know. And then we've got Lindsay, who has new parent receptions, major donor events, and auction. I guess I have Halloween on my mind. Michelle, who talks about silent and live auction gala, golf outing, fashion show, live music, food, and beverage tasting events. Boy, these are busy folks. Jim mentions an annual Hollywood Awards Night event around the Oscars, because they are a movie theater. I hope you all tell us where so we can all go. The annual auction gala is something that Genevieve mentions. Laura talks about a fundraising luncheon. Tracy, black tie bingo gala, golf tournament, festival gala dinner, and Ooza Palooza Greek dinner. Winging with the Stars dance competition. And the list goes on, so I don't know how many more of these you'd like to hear.
Yes,
but
no, this is, I mean, wow, this is, I mean, number one, I'm getting some event ideas, and number two, it's great. I mean, you're right, Jay. I mean, people are doing a lot of events, it seems as if. I mean, you're talking about one person naming 4 or 5 or 6 different events. And so the question begs itself, how do you use these events to start to build your donor base? Otherwise, you're going to need to do these events, and you probably are doing these events every single year, but not seeing significant growth with your donor file or your donor base. And so things like, you know, trivia night, gala and celebrity toasting, golf outings, you know, these are very transactional kinds of events. So let's talk about, and if Jay, if you get any responses to the folks that, you know, if they have a plan in place to steward their events before, during, and after, I'd be curious to see how many say yes and how many say no. So, you know, do you have some?
Not yet, but I'm sure those will come next, and I'll let you know when they.
Yeah, so how do you take some of these events that you're all spending a lot, it seems like a lot of time doing, and really make them work to your advantage? So the question begs itself, you know, why even bother, right? Well, we know that in the field, donor acquisition costs are so high to acquire donors, and we know that we have a retention issue in the field. It's certainly a challenge. You know, why bother? I mean, again, as I said before, this is a great opportunity to start to engage your board in fund development. You're giving them something very concretely to do. Invite people to come along. Have them sell some tickets. Get some friends, some family members who they think might like to come. Again, you have that captive audience, so, well, let's do something with it, right? You've got your, I love the black tie bingo thing. So, hey, while they're all there, you've got a captive audience. Let's see if we can find those folks who are interested to start building deeper relationships. And, not adding on another event, let's try to make use of the events that we already are doing, because it seems like you're doing so many. The most important thing is, don't let your black tie bingo event just be a black tie bingo event. Use this event as a way, twofold, to have an event to raise money, but also to cultivate potential new donors, as well as steward, and that's not in this slide, but steward your current donors who may be or are already interested in who you are and what you do. Otherwise, I mean, why bother, right? We just keep on this treadmill. We feel like gerbils, organizing these events over and over and over again. So I'm going to share with you right here, and I hope you find these very useful, some steps or some actions that you can take specifically before your next trivia night or before your next gala, right? So here's what you want to do pre-event. You want to be sure that you invite your major donors. And if you have an existing major donor program or officer, or who is the staff person dedicated to that in your organization, be sure to coordinate with them as you work around this event. Certainly, events are a place that you want to invite your major donors and your major donor prospects to as well. And you not only want to invite them, but if you have a great relationship with them, you certainly want to encourage them, your major donors, to invite their family and their friends. Ask these donors to give you the contact information of their guests beforehand, so you can start to add these names to your list. And I apologize, I keep hitting the slide advance. So you want to send them any new event attendee some kind of note about saying, hey, look, so-and-so said wanted you to come to this event. You bought a ticket. We're so excited that you're coming. Can't wait to meet you the night of January 9th. And here's some information about our organization so you get a sense of who we are and what we're raising money for. So be sure to send them some kind of touch right before the event, a little note with a little packet of information or a little brochure. Hey, learn more about us, visit our website, go see who we are. Here are some more things that you can do before the event. Certainly, you can try to upgrade folks who have attended in the past or who are donors. Maybe you would send them a specific invite with the goal of doing just that. So maybe you would offer, a higher price table, a higher price ticket, a sponsorship level, what have you. But certainly, as we talk about personalizing direct mail appeals, particularly as we're close to year end, you can certainly do that with these invitations to special events as well. Segment them out, determine how can we upgrade people to higher tickets, higher tables, higher levels, what have you. And, I know the seating chart takes forever, believe me. I've done them. But it's so important to not only just do the seating chart, but to really think about who is sitting at each table, who they are. Is it a good grouping of folks? And this is a great way to get board members engaged. Maybe you want to assign a board member or a staff member to be an ambassador that night and sit at the table and ensure that you have at least one board and one staff at each of the tables. Now, here are some things that you can do during the event. Now, you want to ensure, again, that that person that you've identified at each of the tables, whether board or staff, is circulating. You want to have people mixing and mingling, particularly before the dinner when folks are up having drinks, walking around. Go to them. You can also have board members who can kind of circulate amongst the events and make sure that they visit all of the tables and just say hello, thank you for coming, I'm a board member. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And certainly you want to do some prospect research. And this should actually go believe it or not, but you want to know who is attending, do they have capacity, do they have interest? and share this information with your ambassadors. And also not only share that information, but create some talking points so that they can circulate during the event, know who specific folks are, and be able to have a series of talking points that they can use with the donors or the prospects, right? So those are some, I mean, you have limited time. And the other thing that you can do is this whole, let me go back to this slide here. And it's not in the slide, but I should add it, is the whole gifts of love. One thing that I see very successfully is, particularly if you have a live auction, one non-transactional kind of financial most of them are financial transactions that night, but something that you can do that's not a financial transaction is this gift of love. And what do I mean by that? I mean, how many of you have a gift of love? If you can type it into the questions box. But basically, you have a live auction, an auctioneer that basically says, this is the mission of the organization, and we're going to start taking donations at the $5,000 level. Is there anyone at the $5,000 level? You know, and then the auctioneer continues to solicit donations purely for the mission, and people will start to raise their bid paddles and say 1,000 or 5,000, or as the auctioneer goes along. So I've seen that done very, very successfully, and certainly if people are, you know, participating in that gift of love, those are folks who are literally raising their hands the night of your event to say, I am interested in the mission of this organization, or I may be interested in the mission of this organization and deepening my relationship or learning more about it. So here are some things that you can do after your event. And as I mentioned, certainly you can email me post-webinar, and I will provide you with somewhat of an event stewardship plan as well as some of these ideas. But here are some things to consider after the event. Certainly, and actually this was developed with a client and myself. This is not information that you will probably see out there, because this was designed for a particular organization. When I was asked to come up with, when I talked about stewardship and how important it is, then the client said to me, well, can you come up with a plan? And so this is exactly what I came up with, so I'm sharing it with you here. So what we came up with is, we said what are the groupings of people who attended the event, and we brainstormed, and we said, well, we had new attendees, and we had repeat attendees that did not donate. Maybe they didn't donate to the gifts of love or what have you. So how were we going to steward those new attendees, right? And so the suggestion was for new attendees, we'll have a board member, maybe the board member that they're connected to, call them up and, you know, thank them for, if they made a donation, thank them for the donation. If they bought a raffle item, thank them for that, and let them know a little bit about how the money would be used by the organization. You know, it's going to provide the money raised from your donation and everyone else's the night of the event is going to provide literacy classes for the young women who attend our program. And so you want to urge the board member to also engage that particular attendee about their possible interests. So what did you think of the event? Do you think the cause is something that you may be interested in or not? And be sure that, well, it's not up on this slide, that you record this information somewhere. And so the board member knows they need to get that information back to the staff. Now, what about for those kind of people who come every year but don't donate? Well, I mean, there are things you can do for them. You can, you know, have a little note card, maybe your organization's note card, or, you know, a board member, the executive director, writes them a little note. Thank you for coming out to the event. And if you have any interest in learning more about the organization, feel free to give me a call to come to one of our Tuesday tours or something like that. Now, you also have these categories of donors, right? You have those, we just talked about those repeat attendees that did not donate. What about those that do? Because some of them do. They come every year, they donate, they give the gifts of love, they might buy a silent auction, what have you. So, you know, I say if you have a relationship, or if someone donated more than $1,000, you give them a call. Now, you might want to decide to send a note to everyone else that you don't have a relationship with or who gave. Now, these thresholds can change. This is just for that particular organization. It might be 500, it might be 250. You might want to call everyone. And you certainly, again, want to reiterate, thank you for your donation. Your donation, along with everyone else's, is going to, again, provide after-school programming for the children of the moms who come to our literacy program, and how important and impactful that will be. And again, delve into, what did you think of the event? What did you think of the mission of what we were doing? And see if there's any probe for any interest at all. And then those that donated but did not attend, right, you want to maybe call them if you have a relationship with them. These are folks who said, here's 250. I can't make it that night, but hey, here's a donation, okay? So, I mean, those folks are definitely raising their hand to you and saying, I'm interested in your mission. So call them up. Again, the threshold doesn't matter. You can call everyone. But you just want to say, hey, thank you. I'm sorry you missed the night. It was a beautiful evening. I just want to tell you where your donation is going to be used, and how much of an impact it's going to have. And hey, by the way, are you interested in learning any more about our organization? Maybe coming to one of our Tuesday tours, or an open house that we're having. So you definitely want to always explore that interest question. I think, number one, thanking them and reporting back on the impact is critical, but you certainly want to explore the fact, do they have interest? Because if they have interest and they are raising their hand to say they have interest, that's a prospect or a potential donor, or a donor that you have a relationship with that may want to deepen their relationship. So those are real red flag signals that say, oops, stop here, let's capture this name. Now, what about those people for this particular organization? They had people who donated significant auction items. I'm talking like, dinner with the bishop, or vacation to Italy, in a beautiful location donated by someone. So what I would recommend is, those folks who donated, you certainly don't want to just end it there. You want to give them a call if you have a relationship with them, or I would say last choice is send them a letter. Certainly give them a call. These folks have donated items that are probably worth, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Maybe the executive director, the board chair, gives them a call or sends them a note. But again, mention how that the proceeds raised from the donation of their auction item will be used, and there's that interest question. Are you interested in learning more about the organization? And I always urge and say you need to have some kind of cultivation tours or events that people can be plugged into purely to just learn about the mission, not ask events. People will say, do you ask at those events? And I say, no, you're just deepening the relationship. So you want to take people from the event to something more mission-based, like a tour or an open house or a small gathering to learn more. And then, use that as a way to deepen your relationship with that particular donor or prospect. The most important part out of all of this, because I speak from experience, have a plan and keep to the plan and be consistent with the plan. This was just a sampling of what I have recommended to clients. It's not exact science. Feel free to take and leave and adjust and do things your own way. But the important thing is that you need to start thinking in order to use your events to help you build your fundraising program. The point of this is that you need to put a plan in place for pre, during, and post event. And this needs to be a written plan because, and the reason I say that is that this particular client a year later said to me, what did we do last year? what do we do with our donors after the event? And I said, wait a minute, let me look. And so that's when we decided, I say it, I did not write it down, I had it in an email, I put it into a plan. So make sure that you have a plan for before, during, and after that is written down, and it's called your, event stewardship plan. And then think about it expansively and creatively, and as you go along, you can certainly add to this plan. It's a dynamic plan. I mean, you may have different plans for different events, depending upon whether it's the black tie bingo or it's the the trivia night or the golf tournament, because certainly there are different audiences of folks who are going to be attending. And the point of the matter is you want to define those audiences of the different types of donors and develop plans specifically for them. So this is a custom tailor thing. While I'm giving you some, think of them as recommendations. Certainly you can custom tailor the recommendations to your particular group. Again, here when you custom tailor the plan to your particular event, because we're all having such different and varied events, here are some things you want to tailor it to make it your own. Think about the who, right? To what categories of event attendees, for instance, silent auction and raffle donors, maybe you want to have a plan for them. First-time attendees, have a plan for them. Who will be doing the follow-up? So it's not just who's attending, who's following up? Board members, staff members, volunteers. And then what? How are you stewarding your donors? Are you writing them notes? Are you calling them? Are you visiting them? Are you going to use email, social media? What's the message that you intend to share with them? The other things that you should think about are when. When will this stewardship take place? I say, immediately after the event, a week or so later. Do you want to wait? Decide when is during the event, when during the event, before the mission of love or gifts of love segment. When they walk in, you want to have some brochures. Think about that. And then other follow-up and plan engagement. What planned follow-up will you have scheduled in? Will you have these tours? Will you go out and make a visit? Will you have some lunches that you can plug people into? Think about all of those things. But the key piece is don't do it after the event, because then you're only going to have a post-engagement plan, and it's probably going to be a couple of weeks after you have the event before you get kind of, I know how it is after events, you kind of get swamped in and you got all this follow-up work to do. So you want to think this through before your event, before you, as you're starting to plan your initial steps to the event, you really, really, really want to think this through. And then certainly you want to get buy-in and ownership from the board. That's another very, very important piece, because guess what? It's the board who is actually going to be a part of this process, right? We're asking them to be ambassadors, right? So we need them to buy in and own this. And they're going to be the ones who are going to be making the phone calls. So we need them to say, can you approve this event stewardship plan before the event, of course, so that way we can implement this before, during, and after the event and have your participation. And be ready to go. Get out there and enact this event each step of the way. You may actually want to have some kind of timeline sketched out for this. And again, I'm going to provide you with, if you email me, that event stewardship plan. So another question for you. Has your event ever prevented you from focusing your time on major gifts? I probably know the answer, because I have been so stuck in the mind. And you can type it into the questions box. And Jay, if there's some that come in, certainly just butt in and interrupt me. But I know for a fact that events have prevented me from getting out and doing major gift work. So this is an important topic to look at. Really, special events can support your major gift efforts. It's those major donors who may attend your event and support your event. So you want to have a plan and coordination around that, because certainly we don't want them to think that by attending their event and purchasing a ticket, that's their major gift to your organization. So you want to make sure that's well coordinated. So looking at attendee lists beforehand and who you're inviting. And then, what about the friends of them? If you really need to take the steps to ask them to invite their friends and then go through with these steps that I'm recommending. So, we look at this and we say, how can events not get in the way of our major gift efforts as a development person? Because that's the reality. They take away from our time. Well, I mean, can you see if another department can help you with the event? Whether it's the PR or marketing department or the volunteer coordinator. We really, I mean, the eye of the prize here on this presentation is from transactional to transformative, and ultimately we should be building major and individual donors into our fundraising program. We should not be on this wheel of constantly trying to just have event after event after event and spending all of our time doing that. So, hey, protect your time, development officer. You know where the action is. We all do. It's out there meeting with these donors and cultivating the relationships. So see if there are ways that you can get other supportive assistance to help you organize the event. And of course, break even for a positive net to cover the labor. We got to remember to capture that staff time in the event. So we want to break even and, sell tickets to cover the costs, and create a compelling program. Make sure you have a carefully choreographed event from start to finish, and make sure you have some kind of mission touches in your event. And again, you may want to seed the event, so you may want to have some selected donors provide what I would call a matching or challenge gift the night of the event. But most importantly, if you're going to do an event, folks, and you're going to spend this time, and some of you are doing 4 or 5 or even more of them, do it right. Use some of the steps in this webinar to get to start to build some transformative relationships. Don't make it just a happy time, a social time. Don't make it for those donors who like social events. I mean, yes, you want to, but also insert the cause in there and do some of this stewardship and cultivation. And make sure that you continue to show that by donors coming to the event that they are going to have and what kind of impact they are going to have on your service area, on your services, your constituents, those that you serve. So that's a little bit, this is the first time doing this presentation, so I tried to really cover, why are we looking at special events as a feeder to our transformative development program. We talked about the important difference between transactional versus transformative giving and how we want to move our organizations to really start to move from transactional to transformative, and then how do we steward donors or prospects before, during, and after, and how to custom tailor that to your particular organization and your particular event. And then we talked a little bit about how events can really work together or not with your major gift efforts, but you certainly want to make sure that that the two are certainly coordinated. So I would love to hear, in addition to any, Jay's got posted any questions or comments, post them now. I would love to hear, and I'm going to take any questions or comments that you have in a few minutes, but what are some of the top 3 things that you learned during this webinar that you certainly want to take back to your particular office right away and implement? Were there some real salient pieces here that you could take back? And at this time, we have about 10 minutes or so left till the top of the hour. I can take some questions and see what you, and also see what you want to take back to your office. So thank you very much. And Jay, I don't know if you see any questions there, but I would love to take some.
Well, there's a lot of content flying through this way, and I'm going to try to
oh, wow.
So I first of all, good thinking. So I'll start with the ones that came in kind of first and go through in order. I guess when you were talking first about planning, so people were talking about the events that they had done, and I listed a bunch of those with you. Some people then started talking a little bit about planning in the midst of the questions. So there were comments like these from Amanda, who said, "First time we've done this event, 1-hour luncheon with speakers, ending with an appeal to donate. We targeted new faces who had not given to the organization before, and it ended up with a 60% participation from attendees, where 50% of donations were coming from completely new sources."
Wow.
So that's not so, but at least what the result was, which I thought was great.
That is great.
Mary mentioned that we do a large silent auction with 350 people in attendance. It's their 19th annual, and they also do a large old-fashioned barbecue with about 300 people. The auction raises $190,000, and the barbecue $40,000. So lots of different comments like these that were kind of a broader stroke on the events themselves. Amanda mentions the plan for our last event is to approach our table ambassadors and to create a unique approach and giving profile for each donor to measure their attachment to the organization and potential for giving down the road. Is that the kind of thing that you've used, Robin, that kind of profiling in the past for these events?
Yeah, I would say, something, I think about DonorSearch. Are you screening your names of people who are attending? Do you know who's attending your events? And I would say if you can get that kind of data, and I'm sorry, Jay, I couldn't hear all of the question, but I'll just continue. You can tell me if I answered it correctly or enough. Figure out, DonorSearch is a perfect tool to screen some of, who are your gala attendees? Who's attending your event? What do we know about them? Share that information, share the attendees list with other people to figure out. The other thing I didn't mention is maybe pre-event, you want to have some targeted strategies around who's attending in terms of your potential donors or your current donors. Maybe there's, you want to get the ear of Mrs. Smith and just share with her about something her gift just made possible this week, just as a quick touch point. But certainly know who's attending. I don't think, when I've been involved with events, we just know attendees, but we don't know the profiles of them, and a tool like DonorSearch certainly can get you some of that information that can be rounded out with conversation with others. So I don't know if I answered that or commented enough, because you're kind of breaking up a little bit.
Yes, you certainly did, and several people did ask about screenings as well. So you took all the questions at once. So that's terrific. There was also a couple of people who talked about staff members and consultants. That some organizations have consultants who work on these events for them. They bring them in, they do the whole event. Others have dedicated staff. What are your thoughts on those issues?
Well, I think, again, my mind always goes to costs. How much is it costing you to pay a consultant to raise the money for this event? And the other piece of it is, finding a consultant who, is not just a special event planner, but has some fund development experience behind them that can go through this webinar and say, well, we really need to think about who's attending. Do we have profiles on them? What are our strategies pre, during, and post? What I often sometimes see is special events consultants who don't have a lot of, maybe they're wedding planners, maybe they're corporate event planners, but they don't understand the importance of building a donor base, engaging donors deeper, and moving from transactional to transformative. So that's what I would say. Be very cautious of, number one, the costs, and calculating those costs into your events, and then what is the background of the particular consultant. Now, staff members, I find that's who usually carries the event, right? In all reality, that's who, I cringe when I think about it, of all the events I've been a part of. But we also start to pull in direct service staff because we don't have enough volunteers, women or manpower, or our volunteers are doing other things. So the question begs itself. We're taking away from direct services. not only just in resources, monetarily wise, but also in people who should be providing counseling when they're not, and those kinds of things. So be just very cautious around what are the parameters of your event. So, ultimately have a strong event committee with lots of volunteers who are willing to get their hands dirty and do a lot of the work. Otherwise, it becomes a very staff-focused event, and you need to calculate those costs as well as the costs of, reducing services to the clients that we're serving.
Mm-hmm. There are another two questions which are really big ones, and they may be difficult to answer, but it'd be great to get your thoughts on it, Robin. One comes from Caitlin, who asks if you have any suggestions for how we can coach volunteers to cultivate donor relationships to help us turn event attendees into repeat donors. So really about coaching these volunteers.
Yeah, that's a great, I just talked a lot about it someplace else about enabling volunteers. It's our job as development people to really be that enabler. So I would say, make it as easy as possible. I think that's the most important thing. We think that our board members or our volunteers know what to do. And in most cases, this is not their full-time job. I mean, they're giving of themselves graciously to help the not-for-profit because they believe in the cause. But our expectations sometimes are, well, just go and talk to them. And, they need to be led, for me, step by step. Here's who I want you to talk to. This is what I want you to share with that person. So you really want to just outline what's required of them and give them step-by-step instructions. So yes, I think too often we think, well, they should know what to do. They've served on lots of not-for-profits, and that's not always the case. We really need to and make sure they feel comfortable in their role is one of the most important. You certainly don't want to have a mismatch with a board member who is just not comfortable being social and being an ambassador. So maybe they're not the best person for that particular role. So number one is ensure the comfort level, and number two, ensure they know what's expected of them, and number three, give them very explicit directions or suggestions for directions.
Right, and in fact, you mentioned earlier about the importance of the seating, that if it's a seated event, really matching people up properly can be very helpful. You coach them, sure, but then also make sure that they're the kind of people who have things to talk about, I guess, when they're at the same table.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you also talked in the presentation about messaging, to make sure that I can't remember how you said it, but about making sure that the message, the mission message is conveyed throughout the event and through all the stewardship and follow-up. And we did have a question about that from Tracy, who said, do you have some fun ideas to incorporate our mission, message, and cause without another boring speech? We've all lived through those. How do you manage to schedule that messaging throughout the event process and through the stewardship?
Oh, yeah. I think back to one event that I just attended that really touched my heart. Number one, they had this whole Gifts of Love piece. But before they had the Gifts of Love piece, they actually had a client recipient of services get up and share their story. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most moving pieces of the whole evening and the most impactful. This woman just shared from her heart about what this organization was able to make possible in her life, and she had the attention of everyone in that room. She was just standing there for sharing that story, and she had her little baby with her, and she was cradling her baby, and it was just so it really connected the gala attendees to the clients. And they also, which I don't see at a lot of events. I mean, we tend to segment out our clients. Where are they at these events, And so for this particular organization, they were a literacy program, which I keep referring to because the gala was just done so well. They actually had a table of event attendee clients who go to this particular program. They had a whole, I think it was actually 2 tables, and the director referred to the tables and had them stand up and said, look, they're here tonight sharing with us. And so, people went up to them during the event, after the event, and thanked them for coming. And it was just so neat and heartwarming to actually see the people at the event and enjoying an evening just like they would any other time. But to connect it back to the mission that way was just wonderful. So those are some ideas, the gifts of love, but also the testimonials. Some other clients of mine have done video testimonials and have shared an actual video, which has been moving, if it's professionally done. So yeah, those are some great, great ways. Other things I've heard is, kids serving as kind of like not ambassadors, but greeting people. Some of the program participants greeting people, or kids handing out flowers to attendees. Whatever. We just don't want to. We don't want to cross the line though of exploitation. We don't want to exploit those that we provide services to in that way. So I have to be sensitive to that. But there are lots of fun things that you can do, I would think. One event, they actually had, we had Ronan Tynan, who was one of the tenors, come to the event. And we actually had, this was a program serving folks with developmental disabilities, and they actually got up and they were part of the chorus and actually sang with Ronan, which we had to get pre-approved ahead of time. But how impactful is that, is to have this famous tenor opera singer, whatever kind of music he is, having the actual participants of the program singing with him. And that was just so impactful. It was just a joyful evening.
Yeah, I guess as you were saying earlier, and it really does answer that question, which is that this isn't just about words at all. It's really about action. You're just echoing that throughout the whole planning. And so I guess that's why the planning is so important. How could you present a moment like that where someone can authentically relate how the organization and its mission has transformed them?
Absolutely.
Which is such well,
Absolutely.
thank you. This has been great. And but one thing is that do you have a slide with your email address by any chance? Because I know that.
Oh, there we go.
Like everybody, you did say that you'd be happy to provide a copy of a sample event stewardship plan, and we've had several people say yes. So if you said yes, that won't do it. Now, do write her an email. You can see her.
Yes.
Right
6 million ways to get in touch with me here.
And if you're not following her, and if you're on Twitter, you can see hire a CFRE right there. You want to follow her Twitter string. So that's among the many things that are available. Contact her. She's obviously a wealth of information, but also lots of heart. And thank you so much, Robin, for coming back and presenting again on this important topic.
Yes, thank you, Jay. And I don't know if you give out a survey or if people want to email and let me know, because this is my first time doing this particular topic. So I'd be curious to have some feedback on it, whether or not it was valuable or not, or what you'd like to hear more of or not hear more of. So that would be great.
Okay, we'll make sure to pass on the comments too. So go ahead and list those folks, and again, feel free to reach out directly. And once again, in case you missed it, if you want a copy of these slides, of course you have Robin's contact information right in front of you, but you can also reach out to DonorSearch, donorsearch.net for that information. And if you want a recording so you can hear everything she was saying, which is invaluable, you'll want to take a look in a few days at donorsearch.net, the resources tab, and you'll see recorded webinars where there are of flash classes, including one that Robin. So thank you very much for that. Thank you again, Robin, for a great presentation.
Thank you, and have a great rest of your night.
See you all soon, and make sure you're back here for the next one of these sessions. We'll be offering 2, in fact, flash classes next week, so stay tuned. Take care.
Great, thank you.